are the points where I have an opportunity to be rewarded with the opportunity of introducing Dr. Welsing and a special person. And I want to do this in slightly a special way. And that is, I want you to imagine, we've all been bred on European together and figure out how they're going to make somebody be something different. And the same theme runs through Greek mythology, where on Mount Olympus the gods sort of looked down and decided to do something. And what they did was to look down at a place called Chicago, Illinois. And they looked into a house where a young woman was being born. There, we're going to make something that will be to our satisfaction. And they sent this young woman to Chicago public schools, and she went through that and PS degree, and went on and went to Howard University College of Medicine. And even though it was at Howard University, they said, well, we have some agents there that will see if they can mess with her back in Chicago, and that didn't seem to bother her any. And these evil forces started scratching their heads and wondering, well, what kind of person is this? They said, well, possibly by her seeing that devastation and seeing that the theories in Western psychology couldn't help and couldn't heal black children, that would destroy her. And they went through a period and see if taking on the burden of trying to do something for black people would deter her, and that didn't bother her. And they said, well, what has she done? Well, maybe we're looking in the wrong places. Maybe we look and see in racism. They said, wait a minute, is she supposed to be doing that? And then she turned around and wrote the Cress theory of melanin and neurochemical, being polite by calling him Dr. William Shockley. And not only did she debate him, but Dr. William Shockley has still not survived from the experience. And ball games and white supremacy system of culture. And they said, lo and behold, is she supposed to be doing that? And she proceeded to write the concept of God, color of God, in the original motherfuckers in the white supremacy system of culture. And they said, wait a minute, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Feminization, bisexuality, and homosexuality in the white supremacy system in culture. And those white gods on Mount Olympus looked up and said, wait a minute, is she supposed to be doing that? In the world and world politics and in the human being. She is the first black person to use her melanin to find an obscure book that was published in 1968. It was her melanin that led her to that book, and instantly turned the book open and found the page. Found the page and Your African Queen. The Queen Mother of Melanin.
How do I follow that?
Be yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nobles. Wait. Because Dr. Wade Nobles left out one important thing. That when I was at Howard University, I had taught there for it and to talk on radio and television about it. And I was assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics. And I knew that I was going to be, and I went straight away in all of my naivete to the dean of the College of Medicine. And I said, I'm sure you know I want promotion and tenure. And he said, I said, well, what's wrong with my ideas? He said, that paper that you wrote. Well, I'd only written one paper. And he didn't even know that. And he said, it doesn't make sense for you to say that white people are envious of black people because they have skin pigmentation. And it was time for me to go on and to have some other kinds of experiences that were to, be useful and to be helpful. But after that kind of thing happened, because that was 9 years, and so 9 years later, to see all of these people grooving on a discussion of melanin. You see, because and the brother said, melanin? Nobody's interested in that. What's that? Do you see what I'm saying? So when I see this, I am really turned on. Okay, the title of the Cress theory on melanin, the neurochemical basis for soul. The Cress theory on hypertension in blacks and the sixth sense. The Cress theory and the Akashic record. The Cress theory on oracles. The Cress theory on divination. The Cress theory on the Uri Geller effect.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, black men and black women, brothers and sisters, I am honored to have this opportunity to join with you on this occasion of the first annual conference on melanin. I would like to dedicate my remarks first to my paternal grandfather, Dr. Henry Clay Cress, a Chicago physician politician who died in 1909 based on the white color of their skin. Secondly, I dedicate these remarks to my father, Dr. Henry Noah Cress, also in Chicago, 6 years of age, but also because he challenged me in 1969 after I wrote the Cress theory of color confrontation and racism, white supremacy, to find out what's in the melanin. I would not have thought of it on my own, just like I was going to be a nurse. And he said, well, if you're going to be a nurse, you might as well be a doctor. Because I considered my father to be a great physician. Thirdly, I dedicate these remarks to my mother, Ida Mae Lauren Griffin Cress, a retired Chicago public school teacher who brought me into this world and was a model for high-level learning. Jackson Thomas Cress, who on her lap helped me to enjoy learning and to not be afraid of challenge and name-calling. Awareness of the importance of melanin for all human beings. Prior to this time, melanin as a pigment was investigated by white-skinned people, but the emphasis was placed in racism, white supremacy, 1970, by Francis Cress Welsing, which was first presented at the annual meeting of the National Medical Association section on neurology and psychiatry, first to identify the global white-skinned population as being variants of albinism, and that white-skinned people indeed envied black melanin pigment. That paper clearly theorized, and I believe correctly so, that because of the two factors of numerical minority status and recessive genetic status in terms of skin coloration, that the global white minority population, I stated that concern to be the most fundamental reason for racism, meaning white supremacy, a global behavioral phenomenon practiced by people who classify themselves as white in all areas in the textbook for victims of racism by Neely Fuller, 1956 to 1984. And let me say that I should dedicate these remarks to Mr. Fuller, because had it not been for his work explaining racism, pursuing further the investigation of melanin, I was led to understand and to believe that melanin did influence behavior functioning in persons with skin color in comparison to persons who had a genetically determined. That paper was entitled The Cress Theory on Melanin, the Neurochemical Basis for Soul. And let me just say this, that presenting these wild ideas, I mean, you take some flack when you do it. I can write with my melanin. those vibes were saying, this woman has to be mad. Eat of the juice. If it ain't got no soul, it ain't got no use. I learned that from my grandmother. I went further in that paper to state that the very we've got more soul. I even noted the observations of whites that blacks are too sensitive, indicating that they are more sensitive and aware than whites. I suggested that melanin was not only the base dance and to perform athletically, but also that melanin was the basis for our more in-depth religious spirituality, and that all of the known prophets had been people of color. I also suggested that melanin was the basis for blacks' apparent. And let me just throw this in. I was in a training program in psychiatry, general psychiatry at St. Elizabeth's Hospital for 3 years in Washington. And I remember going to a seminar when all of the people who were, everybody else was white. And these people were sitting around talking about where was the orgasm. I mean, and I just sat there dumbfounded. Of Urban Health, the Journal of Health Care in the Cities. I just looked at that article the other day, and I noted there's a photograph of me, and I had on, this is to Dr. Now, I don't like to advocate that people look at that video, because that was the days when the dresses were up in the air. And I had cut that dress off. Anyway, in that paper, I indicated that the skin melanocyte, the cell responsible for the production of melanin pigment, was indeed a part of the nervous system. That it was also difficult for white-skinned people who have a genetic absence of melanocyte and melanin as part of the nervous system was able, as a black pigment, to pick up possibly electromagnetic energy from emotional states. I said that black people were able to pick up vibrations from other people, and if people were under adrenaline or norepinephrine, that because of that the persons who had more pigmentation would have the potential for having the highest levels of blood pressure abnormality, meaning that really they were the most sensitive to some of the internists. Have you ever noticed a relationship between the level of pigmentation and the level of hypertension? Oh no, Francis, that doesn't exist. Brain. Ever see Parkinson's disease in very black people? Oh, there's no association. But they, white researchers, subsequently found out. I further indicated that it was probably possible for melanin pigment to pick up and decode cosmic rays. I'd likened the role of black pigment melanin to the function of the green pigment chlorophyll in plants. I stated it is well known that absorb certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. I got a letter from Harvard University, from the head of the Department of Electron Microscopy. And he said, you have opened the way for all kinds of research. But I couldn't work it out. Very, very black-skinned man referred to as the Wizard of Tuskegee. I now refer to what Dr. George Washington Carver was able to do as the George Washington Carver phenomenon. Every black school child, at least in past decades, learned the story of the quote, all flowers talk to me, and so do hundreds of little things in the woods. I learn what I know by watching and loving everything. Dr. Carver enrolled in Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa. He later transferred to Iowa State College of Agriculture. His own people, he accepted the offer of Dr. Washington. Dr. Carver had the habit of rising at 4 o'clock every morning to walk in the woods, bringing back numerous plants used to illustrate his lectures. He is quoted as stating, plants by Peter Tompkins. When asked to discuss his method of knowledge and discovery, Carver answered that he never had to grope for answers, but that they came to him in flashes of inspiration as he walked in the woods. Carver is described as once staring at the peanut plant used to color wool, cotton, linen, silk, and even leather, producing 49 of them from the Scuppernong grape alone. Now, Dr. Carver didn't have any big fancy laboratories. You see, and people wondered how on earth was he able to do what he did. By 1930, Dr. Carver's communications with the peanut plant alone had changed the peanut, once considered to be worthless, into a $250 million industry for Southern farmers. From the Alabama clays, Dr. Carver, after so many centuries as it was when it was first applied. Thomas Edison told people Carver is worth a fortune. Henry Ford thought Carver the greatest scientist living. From the sweet potato, Carver brought forth hundreds of products, and from the peanut, Carver brought forth others. Did it through his melanin pigment, through his Melanin Instrument. He did it through his very, very black color and the necessary levels of melanin pigment in his internal nervous system. He used or was able to use his black melanin pigment to decode, have abilities in this area. Other non-white cultures, such as in Asia, also have highly developed plant and herbal knowledge. It should here be recalled that there are many other cited accounts of other black people, other people of African heritage, who could go into the woods and find plants that were capable of specific of Michigan. My Uncle Charles Griffin on more than one occasion described to me how my Aunt Jenny would tell the children to be very quiet for a while and to leave her alone. She would then go off and twirl herself about like a dervish and mumble certain words or sound. She would then gather plants the first time that I heard it. Again, I wondered what enabled her to do what she did. I now say that she too, like Dr. Carver, was activating the Melanin Instrument. She, like Dr. Carver, was using the melanin nervous system mechanism, the melanin sense system, to communicate with plants. Very high concentrations of melanin pigment throughout the specific centers in the whole of his nervous system, not just his skin. Thus he had the perfect instrument to communicate with all of the various energy frequencies which made up the known and unknown universe. Dr. George Washington Carver is the most perfect absorber of all energy frequencies. That's why they refer to the most powerful source of energy or energy accumulation as a black hole. Quoting from the book Astrophysical Concepts by Martin Harwood, 1973, in the chapter An Approach to Astrophysics for Detecting Visible Radiation. Think then of an even more advanced civilization or culture that could detect not only visible light, but also all other electromagnetic radiations, and that had telescopes and detectors sensitive to cosmic rays, neutrinos, grandiose accelerators, produce these highly energetic particles. Not only must we be able to detect these information carriers, But we will also have to develop detectors that cover the entire spectral range for each type of carrier. Just as we are reaching for our first cosmic neutrino and gravitational wave detection, the possibility of range of energy frequencies, meaning information carriers, is already at hand. That culture, that civilization consists of the people who have the highest concentrations of the black pigment melanin. That civilization is of African peoples, the black-skinned peoples. This work seeks to explain how the black people, the people of the Dogon nation, now the book says tribe, but we're not going to say tribe anymore. We're going to refer to nations. The people of the Dogon nation in Mali, formerly the French Sudan, how their priests had information which heretofore has not been solved. How could men, with no instruments at their disposal, how could they know the movements and certain characteristics of stars which were totally invisible, and a star which was only discovered by white-skinned people in the last century with the use of the telescope? Orbital period of this invisible star, which is 50 years. The Dogon statement is, the star, which is considered to be the smallest thing in the sky, is also the heaviest, meaning in weight. It is called Digitaria. It is the smallest thing there is. This is Dogon philosophy. It is the heaviest star. It consists of a metal. Now imagine white people wondering how people who are, in huts, Digitaria, before any other star. They say it is the egg of the world, the infinitely tiny. And as it developed, it gave birth to everything that exists, visible or invisible. The white-skinned scholars, Robert K.G. Temple and others, believe that it is impossible for people they call primitive to have this masterful level of understanding, melanin, to detect the energy information about this star system, which was central to the whole of Egyptian civilization. Just as the application of infrared techniques to astronomical observation is a recent innovation, long ago, black people, African people, were able to use the application of melanin to that energy gathering station. Are you following me? I'm saying that all of the activity, everything that occurs on the earth, which everything is energy. See, it's just different frequencies of energy. We are all energy. Okay. And that energy goes up to Sirius B. That is why the Dogon also referred to it as a star of non-cosmic record. You see what I'm saying? Where you can tune, those people who can tune in and pinpoint whatever happened. And let me just do this. See, how many people know about communication satellites? I hope we got some engineers or physicists. I just know about it generally. But here's an antenna system on Earth, and it sends information up to the satellites, and then if you got a receiver down here, you can get it. Seems like the future at some points can be the present. So you all are with me, right? I say that this would explain the black oracles at Delphi and Dodona and elsewhere that we learn of now. From certain places you would get static, right? So the ancient Egyptians who knew how to use their black knew where to place the people who could tune in to Saria's beat. So all of the information, tune into the information contained at Digitaria and thus could predict the future. This is Cress theory on the oracles. And through the same ability to tune into information, the universe, and all knowledge. So somebody could read it if they had the knowledge, or if they had the instrument. Our work now, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, is to learn to respect the color black, black. Black, 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 black. Not when it's seen on a pocketbook or in a pair of boots, but when it is seen on the human skin. He is capable of bending metal, causing metal to bend through a TV set. I know people who had stuff bend in their house, and he's in New York and the stuff bent in Washington. He caused computers to stop at Stanford University. Geller's skin appears white. They probably wouldn't be interested in him if it wasn't. But his eyes and his white skin where there's no melanin. Okay. So the Cress theory on the Uri Geller effect is that the laser-like power which Geller is able to use comes from the absorption of cosmic rays or other particles into his melanin instrument, and then using that gathered high frequency energy as a laser-like channel of energy. I really couldn't tell you, but I can tell you that I have used the melanin instrument. But it is not something that I have a control over as such. I think that the first time that I would say it must be the melanin instrument was in 1967 when I was sitting on a number of occasions in my office when I was doing a fellowship in child psychiatry. That was 1967. And I kept, in the evening I would be sitting there writing cases or doing something. I know it would be quiet. And after I went to the Black Power Committee meeting, that was when I met Neely Fuller. And that's what got me started on the Cress theory. If it hadn't been a voice saying go, I never would have gone, I never would have come, nothing would have happened. Another occasion in which I would say it's got to be the melanin instrument, I was sitting in my house. This was 1967 in Washington. It was in December, the first part of December, and I had come home, and you flop down, you're tired, you sit on the couch, and it's like, woo. And so I did like that. And then I saw like a big, gigantic, it was like almost the size of the wall that I was facing. Like I was ringing, picked up the telephone, and my mother said Bob has been killed in a plane crash. And I just started screaming, I saw it happen, I saw it happen. You see, because at the very time that I was sitting there was at the very time that his plane was going down. You see, so I can't, I know that was real just like I'm standing here. Like they say, I know God is real, right? Okay.